Germany's state and federal leaders are meeting today to decide whether to extend or loosen the country's coronavirus lockdown. Until now, Germans have supported Chancellor Angela Merkel's cautious approach, but opinion polls now indicate that mood is changing, despite warnings from medical experts.
How much longer? That is the question many are asking at the moment. A lockdown that began in early November is dragging on, and many Germans are growing increasingly tired of it. I'm really hoping for the easing of some restrictions, that we get to see something other than closed shops and restaurants. So yes, I do hope we're going to open up a bit now. I'm unemployed and I can't do anything. I can't work anywhere, nothing. So I just sit around at home. There's got to be some kind of prospect that some things are going to be possible again soon. A latest poll shows that a clear majority of Germans now want to see lockdown measures eased. The past 2 weeks have seen some tentative steps in that direction. Primary school children have returned to some classroom teaching. And on Monday, hairdressers were allowed to reopen. Still, there doesn't seem to be much light at the end of the tunnel. Vaccinations in Germany are moving at a sluggish pace, and infection rates are inching up again, fueled by more contagious variants of the virus. Loosening restrictions now is dangerous, experts are warning.
If we open up right now, just everything, so normal life as before, we would risk a massive third wave, that the speed of infection is really taking up, and we're seeing a high number of infections in the next weeks, and that with the consequence of people getting sick, people needing to go to the hospital, and people risking their lives.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel has so far listened to scientists and taken a very cautious approach to the pandemic. But now pressure on her is growing. To prevent Germans from losing patience, she might have to be ready for some compromise as she heads into the latest meeting to determine Germany's next moves in the pandemic.
All right, well, let's bring in our political correspondent, Nina Haase, who's standing by for us here in Berlin. Hi, Nina. Well, Chancellor Merkel might be willing to compromise, but what would that actually look like for Germany?
Angela Merkel, and that's quite unusual for her, has already said that she also believes that opening up somewhat is necessary now. And so the paper that we've seen that is going to be the basis of the talks later today contains some steps, a four-step plan. But Angela Merkel insists that there will be an emergency brake implemented into that plan. So the plan says that the current lockdown will be extended until the 28th of March, but that everybody will have to look at new infection numbers all the time. And depending on where they are, those four steps would then come into play. So from next week onwards, already in the first step, private gatherings would be allowed with another household again, for example. And then in the second step, some shops would open, as well as museums and outdoor terraces of restaurants. In the third step, the restaurants could open up completely. And then in a fourth step, schools would reopen completely, and the obligation to wear masks would no longer apply to public squares, for example.
All right, Nina, so it's becoming a little bit clearer, but some federal states have already voiced their resistance. Now, how realistic is it that there's going to be a united approach today?
Again, this is a situation where we are risking a real patchwork of solutions again, because many leaders of states, of the 16 federal states here in Germany, have already said that they don't want to just look at the new infection numbers, so that they would be willing to open up some more and allow some shops to reopen, for example, even if the infection numbers locally would extend or go beyond that suggested threshold of 35 new infections per 100,000 inhabitants in 1 week. So we are going to see a very detailed discussion, I think, about numbers today. And they say, those leaders say, that we have to place a lot more emphasis on testing, for example, because that has so far been ignored in the national strategy.
Right, so plenty of eyes on the numbers. Now, Germany was praised for how it handled the first wave of the pandemic. Now, would it be right to say that that image has been shattered?
Germany got through the first wave of the pandemic really well, you have to say, and then now we're seeing a picture of a country whose only solution seems to be extending lockdowns, and the vaccine rollout has been very slow. Again, those tests have not been rolled out as they should have been, and so it's not doing very well at the moment. And scientists are already warning that we're at the beginning of a third wave, and that if we open up too fast and not carefully enough, that third wave could hit Germany really badly.
All right, well, DW political correspondent Nina Haza, thanks for that update. Well, US President Joe Biden says there'll be enough coronavirus vaccines to immunise all adults by the end of May, 2 months earlier than initially forecast. Many states are now announcing plans to ease restrictions, even as health experts continue to warn of the danger of new variants. Texas is already aiming to return to an almost pre-pandemic normal as early as next week, including lifting the state's mask mandate.
One shot and the worry is gone. Several states have begun rolling out the single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine, the third now approved in the country with the world's worst coronavirus death toll.
All I can say is go do it, because it just takes so much pressure off of you worrying about getting that horrible thing.
The Biden administration is now asking states to prioritize vaccinating teachers in hopes of reopening schools quickly. But the president says it'll be some time before the pandemic is over.
When do I think things will get back to normal? I've been cautioned not to give an answer to that because we don't know for sure. But my hope is by this time next year, we're going to be back to normal.
But one very big state is pushing to reopen a lot sooner. Texas's governor wants to put an end to the pandemic's economic damage.
Effective next Wednesday, all businesses of any type are allowed to open 100%. Also, I am ending the statewide mask mandate.
One Houston restaurant owner welcomed the news, but said most customers supported keeping the existing safety measures.
We have all of our tables spread apart at a certain distance, which makes them feel comfortable, and everyone likes the idea that we require people to wear masks.
Texas isn't the only state easing restrictions, in spite of health experts' warnings about new variants spreading. Governments will be watching closely to see what happens as more of the U.S. reopens.
Time to take a look now at some other developments in the coronavirus pandemic. Data from Public Health England shows the threat of serious illness is cut by 80% in seniors, even after just one shot of a 2-dose vaccine. The UK was the first European country to authorise COVID-19 shots. The children's charity UNICEF says more than 168 million children are not in school due to the pandemic. The executive director says the situation presents a global education emergency as we reach the 1-year mark since the pandemic first took hold in many countries. And the new head of the US Health Authority says rapidly spreading variants pose the threat of a 4th pandemic wave in the United States. Rochelle Walensky is calling on Americans to remain vigilant against the coronavirus.